Hello. So today we are going to discuss ancestral patterns, patterns that are, we inherit, that pass down from generation to generation. We want to discuss some of the patterns that we have embodied through our ancestors, starting from our parents and then their parents and so on. I would say a huge one for our family line is control. That's a huge one for us. We always want to be in control of ourselves and how we feel, whether, we'd be drinking or going about our daily lives, like interacting with others. We always have to feel like we have a sense of control within ourselves. That was a huge one. The positives of it is, I would say, not losing control. And the negatives of that is not wanting to budge, being stubborn, all of that. So I would say that was a huge one for myself. What about you two?
I think for me, the one that stands out is the woman in our family, I think, tolerated relationships that weren't for them a lot longer than they should have. And that's something that I see that has shown up in me is tolerating certain relationships. But yeah, that's
ignoring the red flags and stuff.
And just staying because it's comfortable,
Yeah. And then disrespecting ourselves in the process of that, not, placing boundaries on things and allowing things to fly, because we're the type that when we are in relationships, we are in there for a long time, for the long haul.
I think too, we know that. At least for me, I know I'm a very loyal person when it comes to being in a relationship. That I know I would go above and beyond for that person that I care about. I would do anything for them. That sometimes it's like, I have that battle of am I doing too much? And am I making it too easy for that person because of the patterns that, come up in my life? So then that's where the relationship is relationships are harder. So.
Could you give up a piece of you, to like you were saying, give them or giving more than you should. You give up pieces of you or what you actually want just to make that relationship work.
Yeah, and the downside of that is your partner not recognizing their own patterns and what they're doing wrong, because we do not address what it is and we sweep things underneath the rug, or dismiss red flags and that. So when you're in a relationship with someone, if by doing and being everything for that person and allowing things to slide so there's no conflict, or by ignoring all that, is also not allowing them to grow, because you're in a sense stunting their growth, because they're not going to see what's going on with themselves, because you kind of in a sense baby that for them. So if they tend to cross your boundaries by passively aggressively belittle you in front of their friends, just because you don't want conflict, you're going to just let that slide and laugh it off, even though it's crossing your boundaries. They're not going to know if they're doing something wrong. They're not going to know to change that they're actually demeaning you in front of others, and so why would they change? Because they make it so easy for them not to.
Sometimes too, we make it so easy because when growing up, at least in my situation, I would avoid anything that would make my grandma upset, or somebody upset, that I'd be like, I'm just to avoid that conflict, I'm gonna do things differently, but it wasn't out of being a better person, it was out of fear, So then that kind of went into relationships. It's out of fear or shame, I'm gonna just make it really easy to be with me. I'm gonna do everything, I'm gonna show up, be loyal, be all of that, and then at the end you're like transforming into somebody that you want, that's more how they want you to be rather than who you truly are, you know?
Right.
So.
That's a huge, that's definitely kind of like a lot of what we saw in our generation from our parents. You know, my father would allow a lot to slip by, and he would just stay silent instead of speaking up for himself or any of that. So we watched that because of our mom's mental illness. Like she would just scream and get upset. She didn't know how to deal with her anxiety, anything like that. So that really impacted all of us, you know, even us children watching our parents get along with each other, and how, you know, one parent allowed the other to demean them, you know, in front of us. You know, the way we were taught love was through literally being mean to others. You know, our mother would say not so nice, kind things to my dad in front of us, and so he allowed it, and so we grew up doing the same, you know, towards others, you know, in any type of relationship we were in, because that's just the way we thought love had to be. You know, it was shown in that type of way. So as we are aware of our patterns, that's the way we can change. So that way our children's can interact with each other and have healthy relationships. So we model that. We find out what those patterns are. Sometimes you can talk to your grandparents if you have them, or, you know, your great grandparents, and you'll kind of figure out what those patterns are within your family. And once you're aware of that, you can start the healing process.
And when we talk about like our parents, I don't think that any of us feel like we are blaming or pointing fingers, because we really understand that they did the best they could with the tools that they had. And that's exactly how I feel sometimes. Like, I'm trying to do the best that I can with the tools I have, but now that we have like that awareness of those patterns, like you said, Hannah, you can break them. You can break them.
Absolutely. And it's
a different mindset too, looking at the patterns of your like parents now than whereas before it was kind of more of like that victim mentality, like this was done to me. I went through all these things because of this person. It doesn't feel like that anymore. It's not like that victim mentality. It's more of
Deeper
just
understanding.
like a deeper understanding for sure.
Yeah, like having that understanding that they raised us the way, the patterns that they learned from their parents, you know. So, you know, someone from the outside might say, wow, how could you do that? How could you just yell at your child like that and blah, blah, blah. But if that's all they know, if that's the household that they were in and that's all they were taught, to them it doesn't look any different, you know, until you recognize, and sometimes your children's, like my niece and nephews, like back in the day, like if I like got mad at them or something, they would look at me in a certain way, and I would be like, yeah, that probably wasn't a good idea. And that's how I learned like my patterns and like how I was and like how I was raised, and how, you know, they kind of looked at me in a certain way that made me, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I should have chilled out a little bit, you know. But it's in recognizing those that you can start seeing growth and healing within that line. So
yeah, I think you can choose to understand why someone is the way they are, or do what they do, or say what they do, without condoning their behavior. Like, you can understand and still doesn't mean that you agree or condone their behavior.
right.
It just feels different when you can actually look at people and see them for their trauma or pain, and understand why
And-
they are the way they are.
Yeah, and not be judgmental towards that, you know, because everybody is going through stuff. It doesn't make it okay, like Amy said, I want to condone it. But absolutely everybody, that's why it's good to do these, to do this, like, to do healing work, so that you can recognize those negative patterns about yourself and you can do something about it and change that, you know. Not everybody wants to do the healing, not everybody wants to do that, you know. Some people don't choose to do that, or they don't know how, or whatever the reason it may be, but, you know, you can just, like we say, like, just have compassion for those. It doesn't mean you have to have them in your life and associate with them, but in knowing, in us knowing, we have compassion for others and understanding that. So ancestral patterns aren't only patterns that could be perceived as negative. Ancestral patterns that are passed on could also be positive. You know, we have a lot of beautiful patterns that were passed on. The ability to have empathy towards others and understanding. Although our parents raised us in a chaotic household, they're very, very empathetic towards others, probably more than us in general as a family unit, but they modeled that for us, and not to be, you know, judgmental towards them. But the positives I wanted to say also about ancestral patterns is like what we had discussed in our previous videos about the child that's hyper independent, and then the child that allowed their parents to do everything for them. So the positives in those patterns are, so let's say your parent raised you to be very independent, almost to the point where they kind of neglected your needs and neglected those things about you, you know, because of the way they were raised. So they were, you know, like our last video, the avoidant attachment, they didn't pay attention to you at all. That can become a positive in a sense that because of that trauma, you were able to fend for yourself. You were able to be an independent person. You were able to do things for yourself. Obviously, the negative is that it's hard for you to receive the help and all of that. Like, so that part would be the traumatic part. But there's always like a light to every, you know, pattern as well. So just keep that in mind. And also with the child that had everything done for them, that was scary because they went out into the world and did not know much. But they did learn to be nurturing and loving and kind towards others, so then they embodied that. So yeah, there's always a shadow and light side to each pattern that we embody through our ancestors, or, you know, we inherited through our ancestors. So
Yeah, and I think it's well known that trauma is passed down from generation to generation, even through our DNA, but so too is resilience. And that's one thing that I know was passed down in our, you know, lineage, is like women were so resilient because they endured so much. So that's like, you know, I would say the upside of it is like I think all of us, you know, in the family, the resilience is big.
Yeah, like we don't give up. We absolutely do not give up. And even in fear is another one I would say. We feared a lot growing up, but because of that resilience, it threw fear out the window. You know, yeah, we still went through the fear in our resilience, but yeah, that's another huge positive one is what you mentioned. But
I think too, just like keeping our families super close with each other. That's huge, that we all accept each other kind of, and just who we are independently, and we're very open and in that sense too.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of healing that had to happen for us to get here, but it happened.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the healing isn't always easy, but it's within the interaction with each other that helped the healing process too. We didn't ignore each other like at one point we did, you know, but us coming together, understanding each other, interacting with each other, spending time with each other allowed and helped the healing process as well. Can't really recognize certain patterns within each other that were passed on because of our traumas without interacting with each other and understanding that with one another. So
Yeah, essentially we broke that pattern because I would say both my parents, you know, their relationships with their siblings and stuff weren't as, you know, present or there. So I would say that we are breaking and we're
we broke a lot of that, yeah. Because like Amy said, we have family members from each, I would say more on mom's side of the family, that their siblings don't really, you know, interact with each other and stuff. But we wanted to not repeat that, you know, and learn from each other. Yeah, so. I think, yeah, do you want to talk maybe about some of the healing we kind of did?
breaking of patterns.
Yeah, how, like, kind of how we broke patterns and stuff. Besides, you know, interacting with one another, we focused on ourselves individually and recognized patterns within ourselves first, to understand each other, you know. Therapy being one, again, like you guys kind of heard a lot of other videos of how we did healing. Same thing with healing the ancestral patterns. Mine, like as always, all my healing is through the tools that I gain through meditation. That's how I do my healing. Kind of, probably all of us kind of do healing in that way too. We at least use meditation for that. So.
And it's never ending. Like, and don't ever see myself as like healed. No, there's just so much. And it really is never ending. Like,
you think you get to a certain.
You're over that, but then it comes back around.
Yeah, so
you
much
know,
more.
it's a process, lifelong process, and.
Yeah, and understanding those patterns is understanding your shadows and who you are as a person as well. You know, like I said, no one's perfect. We never, you know, doing this channel, we don't present ourselves as perfect at all or want to give that indication, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has a lot of trauma and healing to do within themselves, you know, and so.
I think, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I think too, it's just like, once you realize one aspect of your life, it's like, let me just review everything else. But it's just like that. Like, you can't just fix the one little thing that you think is not healed or whatever, because it plays into your entire everything, all your decision making, what your boundaries, what you accept in your life, what you don't, like, what you think is like your moral compass, everything. Like, it's so anything from the inner childhood healing to the mother wound to the father wound to how you interact with people every day, how you respond to people and their trauma and their stuff that they, you know, hold to. So it's just everything.
Yeah, it's a lot, and like, you have to start somewhere. When I say that it gets better, it does. You know, there's going to be certain negative traits about yourself that you aren't happy with, but it's embracing your shadows. When I say shadows, I mean like parts of yourself that you're not proud of, parts of yourself that hurt other people, parts of yourself that hurts yourself, parts of yourself that cannot forgive yourself, that is ashamed of certain things within yourself, your insecurities, your fears, all of that. Once you embrace that, your shadows, that's where the healing begins. You know, you have to start someplace to get to a peaceful place, if that makes sense. Yeah, there's always going to be healing. A lot of people have said to me, well, then what is the point of healing if you're never going to feel healed? I go, you will feel the presence of peace and healing. It's not going to be complete. It's not meant to, you know. We're here again, like I say, to learn, you know. And so it's going to continue, but when you finally make the decision to start some of your healing process, you're going to find yourself at so much more peace, so much more happiness, so much more zen and tranquility within yourself, you know.
And I think that question too is kind of, in itself, it's like, well, if you're so worried about when is the healing going to end, you're not worried about the actual journey and the joy that comes with realizing so much stuff about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're just worried about the end product of feeling happy, feeling content, it's everything that leads up to that is the reason why you feel so happy at the end or content.
Enjoying that journey every step of the way. It's such a beautiful, beautiful journey. It's ugly. It's
Even as hard and painful as it may be.
Yeah.
There are good things that come out of it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's quite the journey. How is everybody doing out there with everything going on with the eclipses and Mercury retrograde? Energies are high. I found myself personally in a space of doing a lot more shadow work, a lot more healing. That's come up for me. I don't know if that's for everybody, right? You know, but on me on a personal level, that's come up. A lot of triggers. But yeah.
For me, it's been a lot of letting go.
That's, yeah.
Serve me anymore.
Letting go of all that energy that has been stuck, you know. But yeah. I guess that's it. I'm going to end again with some oracle cards.
A different one?
Yep, this is a different one. So this is called Angel Answers. It's by Radleigh, Valentine. That's what it kind of looks like, but I'll put in the description below so you guys can know. So with these particular oracle cards, they're angel messages. So you want to pause, if you want to pause the video right now and think of a question. It has to be maybe like a yes or no question, nothing like, oh, well, what color shirt, what color shirt does my soulmate have, or anything like that. Anything you want to know about yourself, about your love life, about life in general, about, you know, your career, anything. So I'm going to shuffle these, and then I'm going to take out 3 cards. So while I'm shuffling, if you want to ask a question, this will be your angel message to that specific question that you're wondering. So you guys got yours?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First one is look for a sign. So the second question, so if you want to pause the video now.
Well, there's a second question.
Yep. So I'm going to do 3. Second question. You guys ready? Okay. Reconsider. And the third. Ask for help from others. So when I'm doing people's readings, this card in particular, when it says ask for help for others, I always say like going within yourself and then asking your guides, or maybe even asking a close friend. But I prefer my advice from myself, because we know the answers within ourselves, and sometimes people can lead us astray to what is meant for us in this life. So I ever take I take advice, but mostly I try to trust myself first and foremost, because not everybody knows your specific, path while here on earth. So more than yourself, your higher self. But thank you very much. We appreciate you coming back and hanging out with us.
See ya.
Bye.